Hello folks, hope you're having a great day today. Hey, today I'm going to take a look at the next of my sort of Cthulhu Mythos October sort of stuff, where I'm going to be taking a look at sort of H.P. Lovecraft and then his Cthulhu Mythos, and then also later on in the month, some writers that came along that wrote in the Mythos after Lovecraft, because a lot of writers, everybody from Stephen King to Neil Gaiman, and many more have written in this stories within the Cthulhu Mythos and so forth. So I'm coming to you today. This October, I'm dedicating it to basically Cthulhu October and so forth. I'm doing a bunch of short stories for you. In fact, I'm going to be publishing one short story every other day for you at an accelerated rate, so we can knock out a bunch of these things and so forth. I'm also wearing my Happy Halloween tie for you in case you care. And then also, I'm basically just going to be spending an entire Saturday right here at the beginning of the month to do a whole bunch of these stories. I'm just knocking them all out in probably like 8 or 10 hours today. This is story 2. We're probably going to do like 17 or 18 of them by the end of the day. And so forth. So for the second story, I'm looking at the Shadow Over Innsmouth, which I consider to be my favorite of the Mythos stories that he wrote. It's incredibly well done. It's very different too. There are things that are going to happen in this story that aren't typical for not only a Cthulhu Mythos story, but also just a Lovecraft story too, which I think is particularly fun and so forth. It's also, I think he's firing on all of his cylinders here. He publishes this in the early 30s. He does not, he writes it in the early 30s. He does not publish it until years later. He didn't believe in this story. He didn't like some of the things that he did that was a little bit unusual and so forth, and that were different. And hey, look, I get it. That's who he was, and so forth. But I think the story is a lot stronger because of some of these things that he does a little bit differently. That sort of, I think, have a stronger. I think it's got a better pacing than I think some of his other stuff does. I think it's a lot more things are happening. It's also his longest short story he ever wrote. It's basically a modern novella level. It wasn't published or sold as a novella, but it definitely is. It's very long. I have my copy of it here. It's also in a couple of these other books here on my shelves too, and so forth. It takes about 2 hours to read, and I've probably read it about 5 times now. I just read it again for you this past week. It's great stuff. It's very fun. It's very evocative. It's very strong stuff. And what I'll do here in a moment is give you sort of a synopsis of it. But before I take a deep dive into the Shadow Over Innsmouth, I do want to point out that I think there's a lot of things that are going to be happening here that I think are incredibly strong, and I think Lovecraft is definitely going to be giving you all of his major themes, all of his major sub-themes, everything that he cares about in his writing. You're going to see, and he's going to see it done here masterfully. He is definitely a master. Unfortunately, it only got a small printing near the end of his life, with I think maybe 500 copies printed, and so forth. And it wasn't until about 5 years after he died when it started to get printed and more heavily that people really saw this for the master work that it is. And again, it's my favorite Cthulhu Mythos work that Lovecraft wrote. So let's take a look at it. So basically what's going to happen is I'll give you a quick little synopsis. Again, I don't want to give you too many spoilers in case you want to check it out. But basically what's going to happen is that you're going to be basically having a coming-of-age tour that's happening in New England by this guy who wants to go back and kind of check out the various places that he comes from and so forth. So he's a young student, probably college age, and he's moving about from various places. He's currently in Newburyport Town and so forth. He's going to be going to Arkham. Arkham, by the way, is a city that's specifically created for the Mythos. It doesn't actually exist. And while he's doing it, he finds out that he wants to take a train to Arkham, but it's actually cheaper if he takes a bus to Innsmouth, hangs out there, and then takes it over to Arkham. So he decides to go do that, even though some people there locally in Newburyport say, no, you do not want to head on over to Innsmouth. You want to avoid that place. He heads on over to it. It's a port town. It's dilapidated, decrepit. It looks like it used to be bustling maybe 100, 150 years ago and so forth, but it's basically decayed. And I actually lived in Fairfield, New England, which is on the Long Island Sound, and for 2.5 years. So I definitely know what New England feels like and so forth. So I now have that sort of a sense of what a New England port town is and how a bustling town may look, kind of died, decrepit, particularly after as I moved in an area after Hurricane Sandy had come through, and so I could definitely have it feeling a New England port town right after, even a thriving one, right after Hurricane Sandy. I could definitely get a feel now for some of the more world building that Lovecraft does in Innsmouth too. It definitely has a similar sort of feel and vibe to it. So our main character is going to head on into Innsmouth and so forth, do some exploring, learn a little bit about the area. He's going to be introduced to some of the local things that are happening and so forth. There's a local church that talks about the esoteric order of Dagon, which looks particularly weird and bizarre. There are some folks here that he gets a chance to get a feel for. he meets this guy who gives him some alcohol and gives him a story that he doesn't believe, and then the water comes in and washes the guy away, and so forth, and he's trying to find a way out. Then he finds out that unfortunately his way out the bus has been unfortunately broken and broken down, so he's going to have to spend the night here. So he heads on over to the Gilman house to spend the night in Innsmouth and so forth. And then once he starts to spend the night in Innsmouth, so people are going to come for him. And the action scene that happens is, I think, the best action scene that Lovecraft ever wrote, and I think it's actually one of the best action scenes, period, in horror. It's just incredibly strong. There's a lot of world building that's going to happen. As you learn more and more, and as our main character learns more and more about the town, the people that live here, and so forth, it increases the horror of the action scene. And the action scene is not just a quick little, like, 2 pages and then you're done. It's going to be on and on and on. It goes as these people try to invade this guy's room, and he's going to try to go to different places, and ultimately he's going to try to run away from this mob and so forth. It's just such a great action scene. You're definitely going to want to check it out, and so forth. And then that's it. I'm going to actually stop you there, because that's about 2/3 of the way through, and so forth. I'm going to give you the last third, and so forth. But there's just, like I said, and I'll pause it there and let you go ahead and pick it up. I'll link you to it in the comments below if you're interested in checking it out. I'll do that for you. In the meantime, though, it's incredibly strong. And again, I mentioned before that Lovecraft really has a few sub-themes that this fires on all of them, and I'll talk to you about them right here. First of all, he cares a lot about dreaming, dreams, and so forth. And you're going to get a lot of that here. Many of the characters are dreaming. Our main character is having some dreams and so forth, and you're going to have that from the beginning all the way till the last couple of pages. It's an important part of the story. Second of all, he does not like water, oceans, and so forth. He definitely is phobic of any of that sort of stuff, and you get a feel for that really strong. There's a big disquieting sense of the brine that comes across in this story. You definitely are going to feel like this is like the water, the ocean is evil from the very beginning. From the things, he's also very evocative at selling the place of Innsmouth. Innsmouth itself has a lot of things that are going on. You can taste it, you can smell it, you can feel it in your skin as you read this story. You get it in all 5 of your senses. There's a palpable sense of Innsmouth after you're finished with it. Yes, it's as long as a short story, but he does not sell that length poorly. I mean, he's going to buy it for all of its worth. And by the time you're done, Innsmouth is probably, I think, the best setting he ever created. It's just so strong and so evocative, and so forth. It's worth pages, trust me, to read the world building he's going to do for that city, and so forth. And then finally, one of his last sort of subgenres he really cares about is exploring blood, inheritance, and so forth, who are our actual people and ancestors, and the progeny and so forth. And that's definitely something that he really cares a lot, and he'll explore a lot about. And you'll get that from a lot of his sort of works, like, for example, the Diary of Alonzo Typer, for example, will have that in it. The story of Alonzo Typer will have it in it. And there'll be others too. And I think that this is also going to be a strong place that explores that concept of ancestry. As you learn more about the history of the place, who founded it, what happened to it, and so forth, and who's his kids that are still there, grandchildren, his descendants that are still there, and so forth, that are and running the place and such. You'll also get a sense for what's happened and so forth from that. So there's a real sort of sense of sort of ancestry, heritage, and bloodlines that you're going to get in this story too. So it's all of his sub-themes just out of the park. I actually consider this to be one of the best stories out there, period, and full stop. And that's it. I'm going to end my review there. And so forth. If you've read it, I'm happy to talk with you about it further. If you disagree with me, if you think other ones of his stories are better, or if you just don't think this is as good as I think it is, that's fine. I'm happy to engage with you further. Why? Talk about passages. If there's some more specifics you want to talk about, I'm also happy to engage you with those too. And then, so check it out in the comments below. Hey, if you liked this review, there's no reason not. It's a subscribe button. My channel cares a lot about famous classics from horror, science fiction, and fantasy. And a book and a work from the early 30s that wasn't published until probably the mid 30s and so forth, really properly. It's definitely classic like this definitely qualifies for this channel, and so forth. And finally, hey, if you watch this video all the way to the end, I want to thank you for taking some time out of your day. We all have such busy days and busy lives, and so many things happening in our days, that the fact that you spent this time with me, that's really humbling, and I appreciate that. So thanks again. You have a good day.